news of another defection. Lawmaker from Nassarawa, David Emmanuel, had informed the House of his move from the CPC to the PDP. When eventually things settled down, the House turned its focus to the only business slated for the day, to vote on the proposed amendments to the 1999 Constitution. Unlike the last amendment in the House that involved lots of papers and went late into the night, this time the lawmakers made use of the electronic voting system.
Vote now.
One by one, the question was put on each of the 19 clauses up for amendment and the vote recorded. That was until the 8th clause that had to do with the impeachment of the president and vice president.
Alteration of Section 143, 308 members registered, 297 voted, 172 yes, 3 abstention, 122 no. This has not met with the requirement of the Constitution. The amendment, therefore, has failed.
Other amendments, such as that seeking first-line charge for the Nigerian police and other security agencies and insurance for members of the Nigerian Youth Service Corps, all scaled through. Some of the lawmakers spoke on the outcome.
We tried to explain it to them. They now realize that, look, it was a mistake. But some people are coming from the background that, look, there is an area of impeachment in the air, and they believe you're doing this to impeach. I mean, you don't make law with a specific person in mind. You're making law that in the next 10 years, when you are no longer here, and say, look, I've simplified the process of removing an unpopular president. And you see, when you say impeached by the House, if the House impeaches through a simple majority, that doesn't mean the president will leave office. It only means that the president is indicted, that there is a probability that those indictments are true. Then it goes to Senate, where you need 2/3 of the vote. But I'm sure by any other time that it comes, I think it will scale through.
It is easier to impeach a governor or a president under the present provision in Section 143. The new amendment seeks to create a situation where the House of Reps will impeach, that is, frame allegations against the Chief Executive. Now the Senate, together with the Chief Justice, is given the opportunity now to try it on the merit. And so it was more difficult to impeach under the new provision. But unfortunately, that import did not go down, was not fully understood, and it was voted and thrown out. But that is the beauty of democracy. The only thing that is permanent in life is change. A constitution or a law is supposed to serve the interests of the people. If at any moment in the course of implementing the constitution, it is found that any extant provision of the constitution, instead of serving the interests of the nation, is not serving the interests of the nation, of course it can be amended. And the constitution itself recognizes the fact that it will continue to be a subject of alteration. That's why specific provision for altering the constitution is made under Section 9.
Most often, when matters are very controversial, people have the varied opinion for their conscience and the minds of their constituents. I mean, not everybody is comfortable with the provisions, the recommendations by the committee that came from the result of public hearing, that came also from the result of our second day in the House. Some members have had cause to think differently, and of course are entitled to the opinion. And the voting today, as far as I'm concerned, reflected the mood of the nation, reflected the thinking of our constituents, and reflected indeed the general position of how the things should be. And we abide by it. We are very comfortable with it. No effort was made by any of the presiding officers or members of leadership to sway members to vote in one word. I'm sure you noticed it. We allow people to vote their conscience, and the result of the conscience is what we have displayed. We will have a harmonization committee between the Senate and the House of Representatives, and then begin to look at the various clauses that both chambers have voted. Each of them that have passed the required 2/3 or 4/5, as the case may be, will take it.
The House says it will now turn its attention to the 2014 appropriation bill. The debate on the bill will now commence on Tuesday, the 4th of February, 2014. So it's now time to wait for the setting up of the harmonization committees and then see which of these amendments will survive that process. Next, let's listen to the report on the Senate debate on the 2014 budget.
This is the first Senate plenary session for the week. Last week, the Senate announced that it would devote the entire week to debating the 2014 budget, and at Tuesday's sitting, lawmakers did just that.
Applicable to both sides.
But it was a different budget debate than what we have seen recently. This debate was more heated, and lawmakers seemed to argue more along party lines. We saw lawmakers from the APC passionately criticizing the budget, while one APC lawmaker brazenly campaigned on the floor of the Senate.
Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, the founder of Okonjonomics. She has failed us, she has failed this country, we will no longer accept it. I want to call on her again and again and again that she should resign and go back and work for the World Bank.
Presidential Amnesty Program, 23.6 billion. Reintegration of ex-militants, 35.4 billion. Total, 59 billion. While total budget for the Nigerian Army is 4.8 billion. Ministry of Defense headquarters, that includes Army, Navy, Air Force, 34 billion. Mr. President, are we serious?
Let me give Nigerians the good news. There is hope in the horizon. Amen. The medicine is there, Mr. President. That medicine is a compound mixture of aspirin, palacetin, and caffeine. APC.
Not to be outdone, the lawmakers from the other end of the divide fired back.
APC has done something good and let us copy from APC. Thank you. Mr. President, sometime 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, the APC government in Rivers State passed a budget in 1 hour and gave back everything to the governor. And so let us copy from APC and pass this budget.
The political undertone of the debate was not lost on the Senate president.
Let us use a national magnifying glass to look at it and not reduce it to partisan positions, please.
When the debate resumed the next day, many lawmakers criticized the implementation of the 2013 budget.
When you want to sit down and budget and plan for the future year, you ask yourself, how did I spend the money of the year before? If you do not do that, how then do you expect the budget you are about to present will be effective or will have means?
What we have found in the 2014 budget is that there is non-compliance. And what this means is that we should just look at this budget, the budget proposal, and say no as a group. We should return this document back to sender.
However, there were lawmakers who had reservations on some specific provisions of the proposed budget.
The Central Bank of Nigeria is spending 98 billion naira in building a hotel and a convention center at Central area. Is spending another large amount of money in building an helipad in Gariki, Kaduna, and Katsina. Is spending another amount of about 50 billion and 10 billion naira in some locations in building hotels and hostels. Mr. President, these are monies which ought not to be gone into these areas.
The debate was not all criticisms, as some lawmakers said the proposal can be altered in the interest of the masses.
The budget of proposal for 2014, if compared with the budget of 2013, looks more prudent because it is by less in the tune of over 29 billion. I think the government proposal is consistent with their present policies of transforming the economy.
Meanwhile, some lawmakers of the House of Representatives say they are ready to resist any attempt